Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world and what time you're watching this, if it's a live or the replay. I'm on my own today. Producer Martha has vanished. I'm not sure where she's gone. I'm just making sure. Yep, no messages from her, so we're not quite sure what's happening. But I hope she's okay. She normally pings me with messages and things. Let me see. How are we doing? Couple of hellos. Hello from Boyan. Boyan, you are becoming a frequent flyer. You're always here now. Boyan from the excellent Mitoff software. We will be featuring Boyan later on in a couple of webinars. And who else have we got? And by the way, Boyan's got all sorts of wonderful things lined up. He's a demon for software development. He's releasing all sorts of things. Hello to the Hidden Tech. And hi from Austria, Thomas. Hello, Thomas. I'm pleased to hear from you. And also from Nigeria, Agari Oginisa. I hope I said that properly. That's good. Einstein, as usual, is coming to us from Nantes. Salut. I am going to France in June as part of the Delphi Summit. I'm actually going to take my wife over to Paris, as you do, and kind of these things as well. Mustafa, hello from the Netherlands. Yes, in fact, that's where I will be. I will actually be in Amsterdam in June. We'll put the details of the Delphi Summit up later. The Delphi Summit's amazing. It's going to be a really wild event. Lots of people going. All the names that you could imagine from the Delphi world in general. So it's got not just me. I'm just going up and talking as you do, but Frank. Oh, Frank is from the Netherlands as well. Excellent. So Mustafa and Frank. There you go. And what else have we got? Oh, Germany as well. Okay. Well, today is going to be a relatively packed a webinar because we're actually tackling a subject which really takes a lot of webinars to talk about, and I mean like a lot. If you took, for example, just the concept of FireDAC, you will be there for ages just talking about how FireDAC works. And in fact, there's lots of webinars about it and lots of information. But I've created a playlist, which I'll talk about in a moment, that goes into more depth than some of the topics. There's only so many things I can do in about an hour-ish. We might probably go over the hour today. We'll see how it goes. Einstein says, will I meet Patrick Prematak? Yes, I will. Patrick is going to the Delphi Summit, and we've never actually met in person, so we've chatted and things like that. But yes, he's the Spirit of Delphi Award winner 2024, so I've got to meet Patrick and say salute to Patrick again. The title and the description are still from last week, are they? Oh, here we go. Let me just change that. Yes, they are. So let me just change that as we speak. I'm sorry about that. What is it called? How to work with any database and do it properly. I'll come back to that later. See, this is why we normally have producer Martha keeping me honest, because she does all that kind of stuff and I don't have to worry about it. And we're done. So there you go. Thanks for that, Jan, for letting me know. Because it is quite important, because apparently people freak out if it's the wrong title. It's not playing on YouTube. It says it is. That's what I'm told. It says it's broadcasting to YouTube. If anybody else wants to tell me otherwise, I can probably check that very quickly. Make sure that it is actually working on YouTube. Because I'm sure. Embocadero Live. Yeah, I can see myself. So sorry, it's probably your YouTube setting. I am definitely working on that. It's playing the wrong title. Yes, I know that, Barton. I've just corrected that. And Boyan says he's watching it on YouTube. Barton says he's watching on YouTube. And Thomas also says YouTube fine here. Sorry, I'll wave my magic wand. I've got a magic wand somewhere because I have all sorts of crazy nonsense in my office. Yes, I loaded the wrong vid. Well, Dominic, you just made me panic for a moment there. So never mind. I have got coming up some really cool webinars as well, where we're going to do some crazy stuff with a knife fighting robot in the spirit of Jim McKeith, amongst other things, who will be with me in Amsterdam. Whilst we just briefly talk about that, let's just talk about the Delphi Summit, because I would really like you to go, if at all possible. If you're in Europe or you're visiting Europe, I definitely recommend going to Delphi Summit. Now, I should, fair disclaimer here, this is actually being sponsored by a couple of our tech partners. It's by GTK Software, who are an excellent tech partner. They do all sorts of exciting things. Softacom are also involved. So are Barnston, who are one of our distributors. Lots of people are involved. It's not really us that's doing it, Embarcadero. Having said that, Marco Cantu will be there. I'll be there. I think possibly a few others. I think Antonio Zapata, I'm not sure if he's going. But there'll be a lot of people there. Dr. Bob's talking. Just every person you could ever want. If you can go to this, I really, really recommend that you do. I will be there both days. I'm giving the keynote on the first day, opening with Jim McKeith. And if you've ever seen Jim and I chat together and present together, it's a wow. He's got a very crazy sense of humor, and I like it, and he bounces off me quite well. But also, he's also a very good developer, and between the two of us, I hope that we can present some good topics. I'm also doing a keynote on the second day as well, and a Q&A, I think, both days as well. So come along, and if you can be in Europe, you'll get to meet me, and you can tell me you think I'm rubbish, or you can tell me you think I'm great, or just generally talk about Delphi and development, because that's what it's about. But that's the DelphiSummit.com. Come along. I'll be there both days, all day, working very hard. Okay, so enough of that. Let us proceed to our actual content for the webinar. And I'm going to pick, which one do I need to pick? This one, I think. And share. And I'll turn myself off, and I'll come back later. Disable camera. There you go. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Well, today's topic is how to work with any database and do it properly. No matter what your stream says, that is actually correct. That's the correct title. Randy Thompson says, I'll be at the Delphi Summit. Fantastic. Really good about that. Mark has given his apologies for coming in late. That's okay. You have to go and stand behind the desk and say out loud 100 times, I will not be late in the future. That's why I always start with it. Hi-in and the band. Yes, unfortunately. we're getting together a band. Is that what we're doing? You mean the ensemble of everybody here. And also, everybody likes Patrick's stream. Yes. Follow Patrick if you can on Twitch, Patrick Prematin. He's a very good streamer. It is in French, but believe me, if you look at the code, you'll understand exactly what's happening, because the language of development is almost universal. So it's great stuff. So today we're going to have a quick overview, really, because that's as much as we've got time for in general. Without doing, really, database requires a whole day's worth of education because there's so much to talk about. But we're going to talk about how to work with the database and do it properly. The slides and link, as ever, are tinyurl.com/rad12db ENB. If you go there now, it will go to the Embarcadero products page. Once this webinar is finished, it will actually go to the blog post that discusses this particular webinar, which will have copies of the slides and all the links, so that you can go and visit the links that I show and various other things as well. And there are quite a few links today to things like help and stuff like that. Where are we in our little schedule, depending on what your accent is? Well, today is, as we're recording this, is the 7th of May. And so we are talking about how to work with any database. Next week, I have some live guests and some pre-recorded guests, and they are authors that are book authors. I'm hoping to persuade Mark O'Cantu to do a brief chat with me, which I'm sure he will. Probably not live, but he'll get there. I'm also talking to Alistair, who is from learndelphi.net, I think. Alistair Christie, very, very good author, got quite a few books out. Holger Flick has said that he'll join me as well. And we're going to fit in a few other authors, probably cover about 10 different books and talk about the subjects and what they're on. And you can get some free books as well. There'll be a couple of giveaways and stuff like that as well. So come along next week for the book club. It's not as boring as it sounds, and we are not going to sit around and, it won't be like, what's that movie? I can't remember what it's called now, but you get the general idea. Saving and remembering settings and options, that's about storing stuff in ini files and in the registry and storing it in key value stores and stuff like that and doing it properly, which you'll need to understand if you write things like mobile apps and, apps that work on Linux, but also can work on Windows, but also work on Mac OS and iOS. And finally, for this particular schedule, because I'm off after that to go to Amsterdam for a couple of weeks, we will be, he tricked us waiting in the other window, says Richard. Oh, we did? Oh, sorry about that. We will be building a sword fighting robot. In fact, I'll have built the sword fighting robot by then. I am going to do our own grocery store checkout. So we'll be able to scan barcodes of goods, and we will be able to go ding and print a receipt off and drive my wife completely crazy, who thinks I've totally lost the plot, and then have a LoRa or LoRa radio if we can make it work, because it just depends on how many people are around us, whether we can. We're over 100 of us waiting for the session. I don't know quite what Richard means there, because it should just work. I'm sorry about that. As I said, poor old producer Martha's not around, but I did start everything off properly, so I'm not quite sure what happened. Fill on the email link, waiting to watch. Not quite sure what you mean by that, because it should just work. Your posted link for this seminar took us somewhere else. I missed the first 15 minutes. We went to the link you sent in the email. I didn't send the link. That's interesting. Let me just send a quick message. Find out whether there's a problem. I've just messaged her. Bjorn, you found it as well. I don't know what's going on there, because this should just work. So I wasn't aware of there being a problem. Yeah, Walter, who is in Austin, sees me live. The link purported to be to the Embarcadero subscription. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry about that. That might explain why I only started off with quite a few people. You posted and then coming in, but not using it. Instead, you started a new session. Okay. That's why I'm in the naughty corner. Okay, well, I'm sorry about that. I don't know why that's the case, because it should just work. And I haven't changed anything to do with the stream. I just went go live and it worked. Was in the other link. Interesting topic today. Okay. Hey, those of you that were in the other link, if you can, could you possibly put a message out and tell people to join on this link? What did you miss? Not a lot. Just me just talking. So it's all good. Yeah, as Dominic says, you haven't missed anything. Yeah, I'm just doing a recap. So I clicked the link below the chat window that said live. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I mean, it should just work. It's supposed to just, I clicked on the button that says go live and I went live and it works. So click the link below the chat that said live. Okay. Well, look, listen, guys, if you could message the other people, if possible, because I can't do that without breaking the stream, and just say where I am and say click on the live thing and off they go. Sorry about that, but they will get the replay if they don't work it out in time. Anyway, so we were doing a recap, and now we're going to talk about the data. So in case anybody did miss anything, or they can't get to the blog post or anything else, you can go to the IDE, open up the welcome page, which will actually open automatically, and it will show you the replays anyway. I've just had Martha join me. Let's see what Martha has to say. Hello, producer Martha. A couple of people saying that the link didn't work properly, and they only joined by clicking on the go live. Do you know what that might be? So I'm just making poor producer Martha freak out. She is not replying. That means I've completely confused her. 1 minute. She's going to go and check. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to carry on talking for a little while about nothing particularly consequential whilst we work out what's happening in the stream. I've done the post on the other YouTube session, sir. Thank you, Barton. I appreciate it. Dominic says, oh, bless. You're feeling sorry for Martha? Or me? Probably Martha. Martha has to put up with people like me all the time. She's it's quite an important cog in the wheels of what goes on at Embarcadero. And without her, as you can see, sometimes things go wrong. So she's dealing with it now. Watching from sunny, humid Tallahassee, Florida, says Backhand 67. Yeah, it's pretty warm here as well. I'm in Dallas, and in fact, I'm moving this week. Yes, it played in something else. We can try the stream again, or we can continue here. I think I know what happened, but I can't correct it while you're live. Martha, I think we'll just carry on with this stream, if we can just let people know. We're not quite sure what went on with the stream, but hey, it's fine. Yes, I'm moving this week. Not very far. I'm moving just north of Frisco, for those of you that know Texas. And Martha apparently needs combat pay to work with me. Yes, she does. And a full arm of tasers and things like that to knock me into shape, I think. And Barton says he's from the great state of Texas. Yes, I know where you live, Barton, and it's not far from me. Well, in the general Texas scheme of things. Okay, all right. Well, let's just crack on. We've put a message to the link, so we need to get on and talk about greetings and go. Yes. So let's move on to the next bit. So data. What do we mean by data? Well, data. We're talking about data could come in any form, but generally speaking, you're really talking about data that is in databases, and those databases could be the big popular ones like MySQL or SQL Server or SQL Lite or Postgres, all the big databases, but could also be flat files, CSV files, and Excel spreadsheets are often used as databases. You shouldn't do that. But when we're talking about data, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about repositories of information that you want to access in some kind of structured way. So, for example, it could be a list of all the names and addresses of your customers, and you want to get, a list of all the people that is a customer who haven't ordered for the last 12 months but live in Texas, for example. And that's what we mean by data. So what sort of databases can RAD Studio handle? Well, the thing about RAD Studio is it is extremely good at dealing with databases. In fact, it's one of its massive superpowers. And you can access, depending on the version of RAD Studio you've got, you can access networked and cloud databases or local databases. Now, networked and cloud, networked, what we really mean is that it's sitting on a server on your network if you work in a company, for example, and you might have a MySQL database or SQL Server or Oracle or something like that, Interbase, sitting there, and you have got that data accessible to maybe other systems, around the company, and you want to write a program to read that data or process it or add records to it. Local databases are always on your local machine. That is, somewhere on the same machine as where your program is running. Now, if you are using the CE edition or the professional edition, because they're effectively the same thing with a few subtle differences, you can only, by default, and we'll talk about this in a minute, access local databases. And by that, we mean databases that are local on the same machine as where your computer program is running. If you are using the Enterprise or Architect version, by default, you can do the local databases, of course, but also you can connect to networked and cloud databases that could be anywhere. It could be on the same network, but in a different server, you know, or your main server or a DB server or something like that. Or it could be a completely different server, but still on the same network, or maybe on a wide area network, or perhaps even accessing them across the internet. And that's very common with things like MySQL and Postgres and things. They're built for that kind of thing. Okay, but by default, the Pro and the CE edition can only talk to local databases. There is also a type of database technology which is called the BDE. Now, if you're a long-term software developer with RAD Studio and Delphi, and you know, you can remember back as, say, Delphi 7 or something like that, then you probably have heard of the Ball and Database Engine, also known as the BDE. The BDE was a desktop database technology which could be used to make it work on networking as well. You had to do some special things. You'll see a setting there for a system, and then you would have some, I forget what it was, NetDIR, I think it was, or something like that. Ciao to Italy. Fishfax, says Nigel. Yes, the famous Fishfax database. And the BDE was very widely used. And in fact, there were programs like Goldmine, which is a very popular contact management database software that used the BDE in the background. There's only one problem with that. It has been for a very long time now deprecated. In other words, you should not use it. It is not really compatible with modern Windows. Now, you can make it work with modern Windows, and in fact, there are, as Mark Richards says, he still maintains 3 apps running on the BDE. Yes, and I actually know other programs that run on the BDE as well. But really, if you can, you should try and get away from it. And I'm going to talk about some alternatives to the Ball and Database Engine later. But if you can, you really, really, really should not be using it. And as Barton says, Goldmine uses in an older version. Yes, it does. I'm a Goldmine reseller, so I still run into it. Yes, it's great. Now, look, I'm not going to knock it. It was very good in its day, and there were thousands of programs written with it. But you really should try and move on from the BDE if you can, and we'll talk about how to do that later. But if you can, don't use it. The difference between the RAD Studio versions, as I said earlier on, the CE and professional version can connect to local databases, but not client-server sources by default. And we'll talk about that in a moment. The Enterprise Architect Edition can connect to anything, absolutely anything, and with virtually no differences. It goes out of its way to abstract the way that the data is accessed, so that you write your code the same way every time, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking to Oracle or you're talking to MySQL, then it will work. Barton says about the BD, I've gotten it to run on Windows sometimes. Please, please, please do not use the BDE on modern systems. Yeah, it will corrupt very quickly and cause all sorts of problems. Data access components built in. Well, again, this depends on the version of RAD Studio that you're using, but there are a lot. And in modern versions of RAD Studio, you're really looking at a thing called FireDAC. FireDAC used to exist as a product called AnyDAC a long time ago. I believe I'm correct there. And then Embarcadero, I believe it was Embarcadero, could have been CodeGear, but anyway, Embarcadero went ahead and bought it or licensed it and renamed it FireDAC, and then did a lot of work to improve it. FIDAC is the default way of making data connections now. Very, very powerful. Has some extremely competent ways of accessing data in what you call ETL, extract, transform, load, and CRUD operations. So you can have a query that will read the data, and then the same query can update the data and write it back. Yeah, Einstein says the not for client server with CE is my problem. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. There is something you can do about that. Don't worry. But yes, FIDAC, very, very competent. And Dominic Mann says, I had reservations on FIDAC initially, but now I wouldn't use anything else. And in fact, that's exactly what it's saying there. I know that to be true for many people. Personally, I use a combination of FIDAC and third-party components just because of some of the things I do with it. But FIDAC is extremely capable. And if you look on that big, massive, great big list of components there, you'll see there's some other technologies like DB Express, DataSnap, live bindings, Interbase. All of these are different types of ways to access data, and they're extremely powerful. But like I say, for your regular database access to client server and all the rest of it, then FIDAC is definitely the way to go. There's also a built-in tool called the Data Explorer, and what that will allow you to do is to go in and make a connection inside the IDE to certain types of database and explore what's in there. Literally, what it says, Explorer, and it allows you to look at things like the structure, what indexes and indices, should we say, are on a particular table, what the primary key is, what the foreign keys are. Now, if you are going to get serious about accessing data, you will also have to learn SQL or SQL, as it's pronounced. And SQL is the source query language, and it is a standard language. It's not difficult. Select something from database. It's not difficult. But if you don't know anything about SQL or SQL, then you should go away and learn at least the basics of it, because you're trying to use any database access, not just within RAD Studio and Delphi and C++ Builder, but almost any product, a Microsoft product or something like that. Sooner or later, you're going to have to use SQL. It's just inevitable. Now, FIDAC does provide you with table management and stuff like that, so you can create controls that will work as a table, and then you can navigate on that table, say next and forward and backwards and all sorts of exciting things. But to do anything relatively complicated, you need to understand what SQL is, SQL, and teach yourself that a bit. The Data Explorer allows you to get around some of that so that you can look and visualize the tables that are in a particular database. So if you see on the right there, I've selected the SQL Lite database. This is a demo database. It comes with RAD Studio. And in there are a number of tables in that SQLite demo database, like categories, customers, employees, and then I've expanded the customers database so you can see that it's got a customer ID, a company name, a contact name, and so on and so forth. So that's what the Data Explorer does. There are other tools out there. There's a product, for example, called Heidi SQL. Heidi, just like the little girl that used to live in the mountains in Switzerland. Heidi SQL, and that is actually written in Delphi using RAD Studio, and that is a very capable Data Explorer. MySQL comes with its own Data Explorer tool that you can download called MySQL Database Desktop or something. I can't remember what. No, Database Studio. I'm not sure. Anyway, you'll find it. Just go there and look for the tools, and you'll see it. And Postgres has got one, and there's PHP MyAdmin and all sorts of other tools. But basically, by default, you've got one built into the RAD Studio. Very useful. Now, how do you connect to data? Well, at the very basic, lowest, least sophisticated way of doing it is Workbench. That's it. Thanks, Mark. Yes, MySQL Workbench. I knew it was called something bizarre. They've all got similar names: Workbench, Desktop Workbench, Desk Tool, whatever. But anyway, the most basic, low-level, fundamental way of accessing data in RAD Studio, and this applies whether you're using Delphi or C++ Builder, is to use some of the basic components to connect to it. So you need, if you're using FireDAC, you need a connection. And then if you want to make it nice and easy, you can also drop a table on your form and a data source. Why do you need that? Well, the connection specifies where the database is reachable, what server it's on, what IP address, what URL it's accessible from. The connection also says what type of database is, so that FireDAC can understand the way that it should talk to that database. Because although Oracle, MySQL, and a SQL Server are very, very similar, and Postgres very, very similar, there are some subtle differences behind the scenes that, despite them being compatible with SQL standards, they're slightly different to the way that accesses it. So the FireDAC connection needs to understand what type of database management system, what DBMS are you connecting to. You then specify, once you've got that connection, which of the database tables you're trying to look at. And once you've done that, you add a thing called a data source, which points back to the table or the query or whatever, mem table or something like that. And the data source is then the link that links all of that connection and table to the properties on a control. Okay. And I'm going to show you this in a second, so no panic. But that's the three basics: connection, table, and data source. So to make a basic connection, you just search for the connection, table, and data source, drop that data source on, and as you can see, steps 1 and 2, you've chosen them from the palette, and then you link the data-aware control, and I'll show you what those are in a moment. Link the properties of the data-aware control to the data source, and it will become clear in a moment what those are. So there's your data source, and as you can see, I've chosen the database enabled version of an edit control. So if I just type in the letters TDB in my tool palette, and you can get that, Control-Alt-P, up you can see under the category heading data controls, you can see DB text, DB edit, DB memo, DB image. All of these things understand how to take the contents of a database field that's been retrieved and manipulate it in some way. So in the case of a DB edit, if it's the customer's first name, for example, the edit control would show the first name from the database. And as you went to the next record, next record, next record, those would change. In order to change the customer's first name, you would just literally edit it in that control. And as long as you set all the properties up, as you move to the next record, it would save back the change that you've made. Now that's simplistic. It's more complicated than that, but that's at the most basic level how it works. The database controls understand different things about how to access data. So for example, the DB image will look at the way that the data is stored in a database field and then convert that or interpret that as an image. So for those of you that want to get technical, most databases store an image as a thing called a blob. And I love that name. And it stands for binary large object. That's what blob stands for. And the blob is just an encoded version of the image. It's if you look at it in the Explorer or something like that, you'll see a load of gobbledygook, and it's specially coded binary data stored in that field. The database image control will look at that gobbledygook binary large object and go, that is a PNG image, for example, or a bitmap or a JPEG. And it will then convert that gobbledygook that's stored in the database back into a viewable image. And the same is true of all the other controls. So a rich edit control, for example, will be expecting that the data stored in the field is rich edit or rigid text, so RTF text, should I say, rich text format. So it'll have all the formatting for bolding and headings and all the other things. But that's what those data controls do. They are specially crafted so that they will take the raw contents of the database field, and as long as it's correct, the data that's stored in there, and that's the big $50,000 question, it will then convert that back into something usable. Very, very useful. Now, how do you connect the data? Well, you go to your data aware control. You select the data source, and if you remember earlier on, that was the third thing we dropped on the form. So connection connects to the database, the table connects to the connection and then chooses one of the database tables, and then the data source is just the link between the table or whatever you want, abstracting it out so that the control can then refer to the data source, which is the second field down there underneath that arrow. So you see where it says in orange data source, that would be the data source one. The data field has got a drop down box next to it, and if I've correctly connected it up to my database, when I click on that drop down, it will list all of the fields in the database. Now in the SQLite example database that I've got, it contains these fields, so company name, contact name, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to show you this demo in a moment live, but that's how it works. So you'll click on it, it will drop down and show you all the fields. You pick which one you want that control to show, and it will show it. That will work with the DB label, that will work with DB edit. If you've got an address field, which is a multi-line field, then you can get it to connect to a DB memo, for example, and have multi-line text. All fairly easy. The first time you do it in the IDE, if you're connecting to something that can be done within the IDE, for example, SQL Lite, you can display the data live on the form. Now, that doesn't work for some databases because MySQL, for example, no longer provides a 32-bit driver by default. And the IDE is 32-bit currently, and so we cannot load the necessary driver DLL to make that happen. But for some of the others, you can actually show the data live. You may, if you try to get that list of data fields, you may get a login screen come up, excuse me. And that login screen, depending on what it is, will ask you for a username and password, credentials, because you're trying to connect to the database. Doesn't matter that you're doing it in your program. Whilst you're coding the program, you're still making a connection to that database. So it wants to know who you are. Hello from Hotlanta. Yes, hello, Hotlanta. It's not quite so hot Texas at the moment, but there you go. Other data-related items. Well, really, when you create programs, and I'm going to show this example program in a moment, if you go beyond the basics of software development, in other words, you're not just getting it working, you're not just trying to make the thing work, but you're actually trying to go one step further than that and make it work in a way that Kevin Woolley, will the IDE ever go 64-bit? Yes, it will. Do I know when? We do not have a date that we can say, but yes, it will go 64-bit. That is absolutely something we are aiming for. I can't tell you when, but we definitely want the IDE to go 64-bit. Where was I? Yes. So when you start to write programs in a more professional way, in other words, not just dropping everything on the form and hoping for the best and, oh, it works and great. Well, once you become more structured and more regimented about the way you're doing things and start to adopt things like some formal methods for software development, then you want to do things like use a data module. And what the data module does is when you click one of those, you can drop all your data access components on there and have those abstracted away from the actual user interface. This is what's known as a separation of concerns, and it's good because what it means is that you can let your data module worry about the connection and retrieving the data and all the rest of it, and your user interface on your form only deals with the user interface part of things. what things look like and all the rest of it. If you drop your data controls directly on your user interface form, then you're going to have code probably in there to make the connection to the database, ask for usernames and passwords and navigate through the data and all the rest of it. This then muddles the different responsibilities of that code together. And that's kind of frowned on really in modern day sort of software development circles. It is better to have each thing doing one thing and one thing well. So the data module allows you to connect to the database, manage all the queries and all the rest of it, and keep it in one place. Your forms then refer to that data module and get the data without actually having to manipulate it in the code. And all your code to manipulate the database stored on the data module. Much more efficient way of doing things, much better way of doing things. Now, if you want to have a play with that data, then Kevin Woolley says a data module is essential if you're using code to connect to databases. Yes, I mean, you can get away without having a data module, but I would say if you don't want everybody to hate you, use a data module for your databases because it's a lot easier. And also there are other things as well, like if you have multiple forms and you drop data controls on multiple forms, what happens if at some point you stop using SQL Lite and decide to start using MySQL? Well, you've got to recode all those forms. Whereas if you do it all in the data module, you can literally drop in the data module, for the one that connects to SQL Server, drop in a different data module that connects to MySQL, drop in a different data module that connects to SQL Lite. It will work because as long as the interface, in other words, the way that data module works is consistent amongst the different versions. And as Peter Pan says, an abstraction, in technical terms, an interface, as long as the interface between those data modules is the same, then your actual user interface code will just work no matter what the database is, because you're always going to have the same methods. And I don't want to get too technical. That's not what we're trying to do here. But anyway, if you want to have a play around, if you've got RAD Studio 12, then you can go and you install the samples. You can go to Users, Public Documents, Embarcadero Studio 23.0 samples. Now, if you're using an earlier version like 11.3, then that'll be 22.0, not 23. And once you're in the samples folder, you can go to Object Pascal /database/firedac/samples, as you can see in the top. Failing that, if you want to actually get to the data itself and open it up with some other tool, you can go to the samples folder and then getting started /SQL Lite. Now, I will put these up later because those parts are quite long. And like I say, the replay for this and the blog post will have these links in there so you can see where they are. But basically, it's in your public documents folder under Embarcadero Studio, and then go in there and there'll be a sample in there. And it's this project, okay, that you can see on the screen, the SQLite demo. Also, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of example help that explains absolutely every concept, because I can't do that in the short time that we have. This is more kind of a flavor, as you know, a bird's eye overview of what you can get. But the thing about the database connectivity in RAD Studio is it is one of the best available on the market. It knocks spots off of anything else out there. It is extremely capable. It can connect to almost anything. Name a database and Delphi, C++ Builder, or RAD Studio, which is the tool, can connect to it. And you can see just the list along there: Advantage Database Server, SAP SQL Anywhere, DB2 server. So big corporate databases run DB2 because IBM like to make lots of money out of this thing. DataSnap, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Firebird, Interbase, MongoDB, which is not even a SQL database. It's what's known as an object store database or a NoSQL database. Microsoft Access, very popular. SQL Server, blah, 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 blah. You can keep going forever. Teradata, many thousands of dollars for a Teradata system, but you can connect to it from RAD Studio. RAD Studio is very, 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 very good at doing this and makes it extremely easy. once you get the hang of connecting up, the things in the first place. So the help that you see on the screen there on .wiki, if you can't remember the whole URL, just go to .wiki.embarcadero.com and then follow through the links on the left-hand side of the navigation there, and it'll tell you. But that's where it is. And also, because I know you can't get enough of this, Unidac connects even in direct mode, no drivers or Oracle client needed. Yes, I'm going to talk about that in a moment as well. Yeah. I've created a nice playlist for you as well of ready-made YouTube videos. And I worked out, I think there's something like 12 hours of videos here. I'm not sure. This video you're watching now, if you're watching on the replay, or all of you that are live, will appear in this playlist. So there's a bit of inception for you. A playlist that contains the video that refers to the playlist. I've thought ahead, you see. I've thought this through. And that playlist contains all the things you can need to know from much better people than me. And there is at least one of my videos. They're like, how to make MySQL your SQL. If you MySQL is probably one of the most popular databases out there because it's the community edition is free. The principles shown in there work with Postgres as well, and Postgres is free, and also MariaDB because they're written by the same person. In fact, I discussed that in that video. But go to that playlist and you'll learn all sorts of great things from all sorts of people. Now, that's talking about direct connections to databases, but you will come along quite often to databases that are not directly connected to you. You don't directly connect to that database. What you actually do is connect to something else, which then connects to the database on your behalf, a proxy, if you like. But in the database world and in the software development world, we call that middleware. And what this does is it sits between your app, the database, and is connected to via the data access layer of your app. Now, data access layer in your app is a fancy way of saying your database components. And so what you'll do, if you've got a database module or you're dropping components on the form, you can go to DataSnap, and that's one of the technologies, for example, and drop the components on, and it will then connect to a server out on the internet or across your network and retrieve the data indirectly. Now, RAD Server is one of those options, which is one of our own products, Embarcadero's product. It's very, very powerful. And what RAD Server does is allow you to use things called REST to access the data. That means that people can, if they say, oh, well, I'm not using Delphi, I'm using web, or I'm using Python or something like that, they can connect to RAD Server and access the same data that you're accessing with your app. But never fear, because inside the RAD Studio is RAD Studio Server client components that will connect to RAD Server and retrieve the data that way. So just to recap, the middleware sits in the middle between your app and wherever the database is, or plural, databases. It could be many databases that are joined together virtually, if you see what I mean by RAD Server or DataSnap. They're very powerful, very easy to use, and other people can use that as well. So if someone is looking for a cloud data access layer, and they say, oh, well, we only use Python, we're not considering anything else, or we only use Visual Basic, or we only use, I mean, good luck, but they only use Visual Basic, or they only use C#, or they only use Angular, or something like that, they can connect to RAD Server and still get the data, and your app can as well. And you don't have to have a Delphi app. If your boss or customer only wants you to provide a database technology, then you could provide RAD Server and off you go. DataSnap is similar. It is 100% Delphi code, and the source code for it is included. And it also connects almost anything you can imagine, as you can see on the right there. All sorts of complicated stuff. I'm not going to go into depth about what these do. In the playlist, there is an item about DataSnap and another video about RAD Server. And there's a whole training course about RAD Server as well, if you really want to get into it. And it talks to, about what we can do. Both of those are Embarcadero solutions. There's also a third-party middleware. So if you're not interested in either of those and you actually want to do it a different way, then you could look at some third-party options. For example, XData or Aurelius, which are both from TMS software. I personally use both of those. XData does the same thing. It exposes data as a REST via a REST interface, and it's very easy to use. If you understand what REST is, then you'll understand that it's a universal technology that, web app, you could write JavaScript and retrieve data from RAD Server or XData or Aurelius. Another one that's very popular is the Delphi MVC framework. Very, very powerful again. Daniele Tetti is the guy that works on that. If you go to, and it's free, by the way, go to github.com/Daniele Tetti/Delphi MVC framework. Very, very smart guy, does a lot of videos that explain it all. And actually, if you go to the GitHub repository, he's got Git books there, I think, and other things that explain all about it. Very, very cool. And if you want the addresses of where those people are, you can go to tmssoftware.com. They're third party, they're not us, and they have XData and lots of other ways of accessing data. They've got their own DataWare components and enhance and add on top of what we do. Very good stuff. And just to make sure I'm being fair and even, we can also talk about DevArt. They have MyDAC, which allows you to connect to MySQL, but they also have AnyDAC. Normally, you need a driver to connect to MySQL because of the intervening technology. But with DevArt's components, you don't need that. You can actually just say direct access, and it'll connect without any external DLLs. Landerson Gomez, hello Landerson, bom dia. He is a great guy, one of our guys, based in Brazil, and he suggests, by the way, The Horse by Hashload. If you're not sure what that is, just look up Horse Delphi. That Google search will take you to the Horse, which is a type of server, which is pretty good. And as Landerson says, Horse is free. Yes, free and open source, very good. And also Muzio, I'm going to put this link on the bottom here. He says Mars Curiosity by Andrea Magni. Yes, Mars Curiosity is also an MVC framework. Very, very good framework. Andrea, I like Andrea very much. He's written some extremely good books. One about FireMonkey, for example. He's an MVP based in Italy, which is probably why Museo knows him pretty well. But I didn't really want to put lots of third-party people in here, but why not? Let's put a few in. So the other thing that Landerson was what that was saying, Horse. Yeah, so DevArt, very good. And if you are unfortunate enough to still be using BDE, and Mormont is a good choice. Yes, I mean, this is, as I said, there's lots of third-party options. Mormont is a good choice as well. But if you're using the BDE and you want to get away from it, then I can definitely suggest you look at IB Objects. Go to ibobjects.com. We're actually going to have a session on IB Objects soon. I had a chat with Jason about this, but it just allows you to migrate from the BDE and do some exciting things and so on and so forth. So let me, although it says QA, I'm actually going to do a demo instead. So this is the demo app that we talked about, and there's a couple of demo apps, but let's just run this for a second just so that we can see what it does. So we're going to get it up. Of course, it's going to come on a different screen because, Windows likes to choose different things that happen. So if I just go into here and say Open Database, yes, here it is. Use the public documents, as I said before. Here's a SQL Lite database, which comes with RAD Studio. And I'm going to click on open. It's going to ask for a password. The default password with this is nothing. And as you can see, instantly it opens and accesses the data. Very, very easy. Now, this could have been, it doesn't have to be SQLite. It just happens to be that this demo app is set up like this, but it could be any other form of technology. Doesn't really matter what it is. And these are data aware controls. So this is what's known as a DB navigator. And you can see that little thing moving along there as I move around. And if I go like this, it goes to the end of the database. And if I go like this, it goes to the start of the database. All standard controls. If I want to change something, I think I can go and do this and call this chai tea, for example. And then when I click on here, now the database calls it chai tea. Now, when I come out of this and run it again, and connect it again, and you would normally do this connection in your code behind the scenes, you can see that the chai tea has been persisted. Not a lot of code to do that. That's actually all automatic in the background. There's nothing special that you need to do with the code. And in fact, when you look at the demo, you'll see here there is some code to remember, certain settings, but actually nothing really to do any data manipulation as such. It's all really about just making sure that everything works on the screen as you see it. Now, the other, the other thing I wanted to bring up, oh dear, is this. If I show you here, at the moment it says connected equals true, okay? What we have here is, here's the DB edit control that I talked about earlier. And as you can see down here, we have a data source. And if I connect on the data field, it should open up the database and ask me which field I want to have. So let's, we happen to have chosen customers. I think company name would be the one. That's all you need to do. So we're looking at that data source, which is this thing here. That data source is pointing to our FireDAT table, which is here. And in that FireDAT table, it's pointing to the customer's database. Where's the customer's database? It's coming from this connection for FireDAT. Where's the FireDAT? Well, I showed you that we connected it earlier on. Okay. Now, if I wanted to, if I do this and connect, can you see here that the name is showing up, Alfred's Futterkist? I really hope that's not rude. I'm sure it isn't. This is example data, but it sounds like it could be unpleasant. But that is actually drawn from the database live. Now, if I turn this off, you'll see it go back to DB edit 1, which is actually the name of the component. So I select this, you can see it's called a DB edit 1. But if I turn it back on again and say active on the table, because that connects to that, that connects to that, that connects to this, which I showed you earlier on. As soon as I say active, it's actually reading the data from the database. Very few other database development or programming languages work like this. This is one of the things that Delphi did before anybody else. This happened with Delphi 1. You could do this with Delphi 1. You could go to a Paradox database and connect to it. Extremely powerful, very, very useful. Now, there are all sorts of database controls, which I showed you. You can connect to almost anything you could ever imagine using RAD Studio. Like I say, the only difference would be that with the CE and professional editions, you can only connect to local databases. Now, in theory, if you pay out a certain amount of money to a third party, then you can connect to other databases because they add that functionality in. But ideally, there are some other things you get with the enterprise version that you don't get with the pro version or the CE version anyway. But that's how it works. So really, on the face of it, not very difficult. Now, we talked about things like tools that you can get to connect to data. So if I just pull this database tool up, if it won't load, let's see if it will work. Hang on just 1 second. Yeah, so this is a tool called RAD SQL, okay? And you'll see it says in special version. This is because I've got the source code for it. And it's open source, and you can go and edit it and put your own bits and bobs in there. But this allows you to access databases, and particularly MySQL, Postgres, and I think SQL Server, and run queries. You remember I talked about the query language being kind of arcane a little bit. This is the thing that you'll need to learn. I recommend you go and learn SQL if you can, because sooner or later, manipulating data, you're going to need to understand what queries are. There are some help files in the Delphi help to do with SQL. I can't remember where we can find it, but it used to be in here. Maybe it's not in here anymore, but there's so much help on the internet about this. It's not difficult. But RAD SQL, this app that you see here, is completely written in Delphi. Very, very powerful. It's probably, for most MySQL people, it is the tool of choice, shall we say, the weapon of choice. And I use this live for administrating servers and stuff like this, but that's all written in RAD Studio and Delphi. And actually, he doesn't use a lot of third-party components. He pretty much does it all by hand, but it's very, very clever. So there you go. So anyway, that is the long and the short of how to make things work. And let's just stop sharing this and turn myself back on again. Have we got any questions? BDE, I thought that thing is dead and buried. Yeah, well, exactly. Don't we all think that the BDE is dead and buried? But apparently, there's still people still using that a lot. I have to watch my voice because I keep losing it. We talked about Mormot, which is a very good system as well. Oh, Nigel's internet dropped. Oh, I'm sorry, Nigel. And ADO, yes. ADO is just one of the technology. I did actually have a slide that mentioned it, but Access Data Objects, I think is what ADO stands for, but it's a Microsoft technology. It is used fairly regularly, so it's worth having. You will be able to see the, let's go to here, the YouTube playlist that we're going to have about all the database technologies is up there. Note that. Up there. If you scan that, it'll take you directly to the YouTube playlist. And like I say, this video that we are recording now, and you're all in, all you chatters and natters. Yeah, Paul, actually, weirdly enough, full disclosure, okay, C++ is harder to explain to novices. And actually, everything you saw today will work with C++ Builder. So I haven't shown anything that won't work in C++ Builder. However, the RAD server to FireDAT databases, I'll have a look at that and see if we can create a specific C++ playlist, because there are examples of that connecting to databases. And I totally agree where you're coming from, that we could do better with C++. I'm a Delphi programmer by default. And so my bias is towards Delphi, but I do try and say RAD Studio, and that we only deal with RAD Studio on these webinars. But we do, a lot of the code I show is going to be, Delphi stuff. Did you discuss using the DLL for the connection for MySQL? No, I didn't. And in fact, we can do that now. So on the MySQL, where is it? Here. So if you're going to use MySQL, okay, two things can happen. First of all, you need to go to the MySQL website and download their driver, which they call this connector. And I'll try and put this in the blog post. Once you've got that that library, you'll have a thing called a vendor lib, okay, setting in here. And what you do is you go through and you pick where that DLL is. And if I have got a very cool tool that I'm going to pull up that will instantly search my machine for my lib .dll. Here we go. Right, so copy path. Let me see, copy path. Here we go. So if we go in here and select this, I now point to this this DLL. This contains all the functionality for connecting to MySQL. Now there is a version called libmysql.dll as well. I just prefer to use the Mariah one because they're compatible. And then when you make the connection, instead of saying SQL Lite, you can actually say MySQL. So if I get drop another connection on here, connection, where are you? Here we go. When I connect in here and I connect MySQL, I can make it so that the driver for the MySQL is from this library. Now, there is an awful bug. Oh, you can't see my screen, can you? So you have no idea what I'm talking about. Let me just do that. Okay. Sorry about that. So I've created another FD connection, and then I've dropped this thing called a physical MySQL driver link. Okay. And I went to here and I picked up the place where my libmariah .db SQL is, but it could be libmysql. And what will happen is that when the program runs, it will look, if it looks for MySQL connection, it will look at this driver and it will attempt to load this libmariah.sql library. However, this is a known problem. This is a big problem. It's not a problem necessarily with the code, but I would recommend that what you do is you what did I call it? SD connection. Okay, so in your create, you actually what's it properly called? I can't remember. Hang on. I can't remember what the property is called now. F11. Vendor lib. That's it. Vendor lib. Vendor lib. So what I recommend you do is now this is slightly old-fashioned code. There is a better way of doing it. And put in libmariah or whatever it is, db dot. Now, so what that does is that takes the file path, and there is a better way of doing this, but this is how I'm doing it. Okay, I'm just going to hide that caption that is on the screen at the moment. 1 second. Oh, was it a question? Did you discuss? Where was it? Can't find the thing. Hide it now. Where's it gone? Did you discuss? Here it is. So what that does, what this code does, is it tells the vendor lib to look for the driver in the same folder as the executable where the program is. So when you create your program, depending on how you've got your build settings set up, and again, on this machine, I'm not quite sure what it's going to come out at, but there is an output folder, okay, and you can choose where to do it. By default, it's platform config or whatever, but you can also say / and do it that way and say, I want it out in the folder where the project is. Either way, wherever your executable is created, when it starts up, it's going to look for the libmariahdb.sql driver there. I know that 99% of the people watching this are going to go, I have no idea what you're talking about. But for the 1% of people that are trying to understand how this works and have come across this problem, they'll know exactly what I mean. And this will work. Now, do this as early as you can in the whole of the app. So as soon as that form's created, in the form create, do it that way. I do it in the data module on initialize. So if you've got a data module and there's a on initialization, I think it's called, and I actually do that line of code in there, and that will then work. I know that it works, but if you don't do it this way, what will happen is if you just have in the driver link, if you just have this with no path, it will search through your path environment variable. And I'm sure you know what that is. But if I pull up this window here and say path like this, it will search all of these folders looking for libmariah.db.dll or libmysql. That's just the way that Windows works. And I guarantee we'll find the wrong one. And then you get this really weird cryptic message that will say something like, the driver bitness is incorrect or something horrible like that. But if you do it this way, the way I've shown here, it will work and work almost every time until someone drops this shared DLL in the wrong place. Oh, no. DLL, not SQL. Sorry, my mistake. But anyway, that's where it works. Mark Rabiot is going to get his curry. Good luck. Everybody on YouTube, can you please click the like? Yes. If you're watching on YouTube, click on the like button. And if you click on subscribe, what will happen is you'll get notified the next time I'm broadcasting. We won't know who you are. We've got no way of spamming you. We can't send you messages or anything like that. All it will mean is that you will get notified the next time I'm broadcasting and doing this talk. So, click on like and subscribe, and it helps with the algorithm on YouTube. By the way, we do not monetize this channel. We don't show you in ads or anything like that. We're a commercial operation. We're a commercial company. And so we choose not to monetize it. It just doesn't make sense because we're also talking about our own product most of the time. But that's something that you should probably pay attention to. Also, go to here if you haven't already, and you can register for the entire series. There's about 3 left, I think, for now. I'm going to start again after June. I'm away for a week in June for the conference, the Delphi Summit, and then I'll be doing some more after that. So probably mid-June, something like that. We'll start up again, and we're going to do much more coding in the next bit that comes up, rather than slides and demos and things like that. What else have we got? And go to the blog, and you'll see all the replays there, and so on and so forth. So cool and deadly. Right. Have we got any questions that I should be paying attention to? Because we're actually 20 minutes over. Could we, in the same app, use several SQL engines? Yes, you can. You can have like one module talking to SQL Server and one module talking to SQL Lite. to store some local settings or something, and another one that talks to MySQL. You can definitely talk to multiple ones at the same time, and it will work. It's pretty good. Paul Jackson says, I am developing a RAD server project and would love more C++ examples. Paul, if you want to email me, I'll put you in touch with a RAD server expert. There is a guy who's really good at RAD server. In fact, he's done a train course for it as well. But you can email me, and that goes for anybody who wants to get in touch. Email me at ian.barker@embarcadero.com and get in touch. I answer as many emails as I can on basically all of them. I'm human though. I get a lot of emails, but if you've got a question or something you like or you don't like or whatever, you're having a problem, email me. I won't give you technical support. There are people out there way better at that than me in the support department. Go to the website and fill out the support form. But if you've got a question, if I know the answer, I'll answer it. If I don't know the answer, I'll put you in touch with someone who does know the answer. So you can email me. Go ahead, and we'll just show the Delphi Summit thing again as well. What are the other questions we've got? Portable Heidi SQL download has the DLLs. Yes, correct. For MySQL, you can get the DLLs from the Portable Heidi SQL. Where can we get an Embarcadero polo shirt? I remember Ball and shipping a t-shirt with one of the Mammoth box sets they used to sell. We got bought by Idera, and they don't do stuff like that. They don't really have swag as such. So it's an employee shirt, effectively. It's not really one to give out. When you see me in person, I did give out stickers, big stickers. You can't see it's behind my green screen at the moment, but it's about that big. It's a Delphi helmet, and you can put it on your laptop or something like that. But we don't have any polo shirts. I might be making some. We're thinking about doing a store, but there are lots of approvals we have to go through because, first of all, we have to make sure the trademark is used correctly, and then the quality has to be good. And this is actually a pretty good quality one. But we don't want it to look horrible and faded out, and then you're walking around with the company logo on. So and also there's just, if we do the store and it doesn't work in Latvia or somewhere like that, then someone will be unhappy. How do we deal with that? So we're a global company. So MySQL and PostgreSQL are a hell of a trouble for programmers. Yes, exactly. If you go to DevArt, they have drivers that deal with that directly, and you don't have to worry about the DLLs. Do you recommend any good tutorials about T-Data module? Most example use data access control direct and form. I think if you go to the playlist that I put up, I believe that there is one that does a lot of, and I don't hold me to this because I haven't watched them all the way through, but I have hosted many of the conferences that the videos came from. But I think there's one there that says something about all you need to know about data or something, and it does talk about T-Data module. I will do more on a T-Data module in the future because I quite like the idea of having two data modules that talk to different types of database and swapping them in dynamically. I think that's kind of cool and very useful technique for even advanced developers to understand, because not everybody does. Thanks for the webinar. I've got to go. Yeah, interesting. I added before connection. Yes, Dominic, correct. Absolutely. By the way, you wouldn't normally have the connection turned on, but you need it as early on. He's talking about the driver link there, early on as you can, because otherwise you'll bang into it not working properly. And you can connect that driver link component dynamically as well in code. It does explain and help how to do that. What else have we got? Embedded databases. Yes. IB Lite is an embedded database. SQL Lite is effectively an embedded database. MySQL embedded is possible as well, Francis. and a few others as well. There's all sorts of databases. And hello, Francis, as well. Hello, Francis. Nigel's talking about Delphi needs a specific version of the DLL, says Nigel. Yes, okay. The reason is the ID is currently 32-bit, and MySQL have stopped, Oracle and MySQL, they've stopped producing the 32-bit version of the DLL. So it is actually correct. However, we're hoping in the future to have a 64-bit IDE, and that problem will go away. The only difference it makes is that you can't show the data live in MySQL because the driver's wrong. The IDE tries to load that driver, and it will come up with a horrible error message. Your app, which is 64-bit, you can target 64-bit, it will just work. So it's not a problem. But the IDE is 32-bit, and it tries to load that DLL. If it's a 64-bit DLL, it won't work. Some of the third-party components do a direct mode for MySQL, and they will just connect, and they don't need a DLL. So the problem is solved because they just talk the protocol directly. Please do a store. It would be cool. Yes, it would. And actually, there's a few of us. If you know Antonio Zapata, he's another one who's he's an Embarcadero guy, and he's very keen to do a store. And I think Landison may have even talked about a store. I think they have a store actually in Brazil. So on and so forth. One of the videos you talk, okay. Mark Richards says, I do that. I have a data module for local and one for remote. Yes, so do I. My apps sometimes have 3 or 4 data modules. I have one that's a payroll app and a HR app combined. And I have one data module to talk to the payroll, which is Sage. And I have a different data module that talks to the HR data, which is MySQL. And then we store everything using local technology with some mem tables and stuff like that. That's in the third data module. So, yeah, it's not uncommon to have more than one data module. SQL Lite is a file that you can link to your IXE as a MS Access database. Not quite. SQL Lite is not the same. SQL Lite has some restrictions. There is a light version of MS Access, but it's a SQL database, so you can connect it. Delphi could access it even if Office is not installed. Correct. Yes, SQL Lite, you do not need Office installed. It's got nothing to do with it. It's completely separate technology, nothing to do with it. Nexus DB, yes, I didn't. Sorry, that's a very good point. There are other database technologies out there that I'm going to talk about another time. Nexus DB, very, very, very good database. They have an embedded version, they have other stuff as well. I have done whole sessions on Nexus DB, and they're talking at the Delphi Summit as well. And they are tech partners and stuff like that. And I apologize to them for not talking about them a bit more, but Absolute Database is another tool as well. But Nexus DB is, it's proper rock solid on the nail stuff. So that's it. What else have we got? I think we're reaching the end of it. Musa says, thanks, really interesting. Thanks, Hugh. I'm glad you find it interesting. Some people I'm sure are bored, but not everybody. Carey Jensen made a great tutorial. Yes, Dr. Carey Jensen, who I really like. He will be at the Delphi Summit, I believe, as well. He wrote the book on FIDAC, and actually I helped him out with a little bit of code once about, and then got told off by, he asked a question on Stack Overflow, and I answered it by doing a demo program, and they punished me for it. They said, "Oh, you were advertising yourself." I'm like, I did a demo program to demonstrate how to solve the problem that Kerry was asking about. Funnily enough, to do with the driver, and they penalised me. But anyway, he got the example and it worked. So, but yeah, he's great. Kerry Jensen, I like Kerry. Kerry's books are very good. Yes, they are. What about Elevate DB? Yes. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to drink. Oh. Elevate DB, another database technology that's very, very good. I didn't want to go through all the technologies because we would be here too long. I want to do them justice. We're going to do some sections on third-party databases, probably on Fridays coming up for more advanced stuff, because I can't really explain what the benefits are of Elevate DB or Absolute DB or Nexus DB without going into more depth. These Tuesday webinars are meant to be a bit more relaxed and less technical. But if I was trying to say why you should buy Nexus DB, me just saying it's a great DB, you love it, is not really going to help, is it? You need me to be able to say it's very fast, it does this, it's got ACID transaction compliance and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to do. Delphi can read an Access database without Office. Yes, correct, it can do that. Where is Delphi Summit? It is in Amsterdam, and it's on June the 15th, I think. But just go to delphisummit.com and that you will see it there. Amsterdam is the answer. The YouTube title of this webinar is false. It's not false, it's wrong. But there you go. When I first started dabbling years ago, I was using paradox tables. Yes, correct. That is, most of us played a lot with DBase 4 or DBase 3, even if you're really old. In fact, DBase 1 and 2, but that's a long story. But yeah, Paradox was the one that Delphi 1 really did cope with. I repeat, are there any tools to convert an old DOS B-tree database to the newer databases? When you say B-tree, do you actually mean B-tree itself, or do you mean based on B-tree technology? Because I am not sure is the answer. Let's see if I can. Hang on. Let's see if I can do it with my magic skills. B-tree Delphi. Well, there's a source code for it. B-tree filer. And then a lot of nonsense about. Well, if you search for B-tree Delphi, I can tell you there are a lot of examples of reading B-tree in Delphi. And then if I try convert, John Assenden has got a blog post about it. Let's see what he says. I can't speak for the code, but if you let me just put this in the help, or should I say the chat, B-tree conversion. I don't know if it's any good or not, but that is a link for you, Kevin, which should help you. John Aston is a very good Delphi developer. He does other things as well. Kevin, will he probably via CSV look at Dataflex? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, B-tree is kind of old, but when you say DOS, it doesn't really matter, because as long as you can get it onto Windows and off you can go, you can do stuff like that. Okay, well, I think I've answered everybody's questions. Apart from the person who's very unhappy because they say I'm lying with my title on YouTube. Sorry, can't please everybody. Feel free to email me and tell me how much you dislike me. That's absolutely fine by me. And tell me what you want me to do in future, different, and I'll do it. I'll try. Anyway, we're here to try and get some basics out, ready for us moving on to a lot more coding in the future and doing some more exciting stuff. I can do really in-depth database fetching and all the rest of it, but you're not going to absorb it in an hour. It's nonsense. It would take you more than an hour to learn SQL properly. But if you want to go to that YouTube playlist, plenty of videos in there about everything you could ever want, in depth about specific subjects, and it is what it is. Oh my gosh, more questions come up. What about Elevate DB? I already talked about that. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Ian. Thanks, Ian. Okay, well, thanks, Peter, Barton, Francis, Nigel. Nigel, I always going to call you Neil by accident. I do apologize. It's because his surname's Armstrong. I was watching everything about Neil Armstrong the other day. Another great presentation. Thank you. It's really, I really appreciate it. As I said before, we do this to try and help spread the word about RAD Studio, because obviously, it's what paid to do, but also to help with you. And I don't care if you use the CE edition. My bosses care if you have the paid edition, but Neil says he gets called Nigel's. Oh dear. See, I've lost it. Nigel says he gets killed Neil Armstrong. I'm like, yeah. Can you imagine what it was like for me with the surname Barker at school? And once I worked as a kennel manager for a while as well, Mr. Barker at the kennels. It's like being called Dr. Payne and being a dentist. We do try and impart as much as we can, and this is for the benefit of the community as much as anything else. I'm paid to do it. Don't think I'm a saint, because I'm not. But I do get up every day and I write code for a living. I'm a professional developer, and the code I write, I use RAD Studio to write it, and Delphi is the language that I prefer to write. And I can write in like 9 other computer programming languages. So I've been a developer for nearly 40 years, I think. So I've done everything: COBOL, Python, C. I also do project management for Python and things like that. But it is about the community, and whether you use a paid version of RAD Studio or use the CE version, it's important that people care and participate in these things. So anyway, I've got to move house this week, so I've got to do some packing after this. But I appreciate you all joining, and we will speak to you next week, where we've got a book club and I'll have people joining me, so I'll have to be on my best behavior and all the rest of it. Ever anything to talk to UK HMRC tax? Not directly, no, I haven't. I left the UK in 2009 before the continuous reporting rules came in, but I have worked in time and attendance for many years. I'm an expert in time and attendance and human resources, so I understand how it works. Anyway, I'm going to go and do some packing later. Hope you're all having a good afternoon. Stay safe, healthy, and well, and we'll see you next time.